England suffer another defeat in the Euro finals, back-to-back tournaments, a big blow. But in today's video, we're going to be talking about the tactics that I believe Gareth Southgate got wrong, which we had a video about this if you want to go back and watch that video. So it's not like, oh yeah, you can call that and predict it. But like I said, today's video, we're going to talk about those tactics and future for Gareth Southgate, because I do understand he has won the most knockout games for England ever. But if you're looking at all the managers in the last 20, 30 years, there's not any great manager that's really managed England. So good for him, bad for England, I don't know, but we will talk about his future at this club. But like I said, we are going to be doing tactics. I'm going to have it on my phone here. So we're going to look exactly how England were rolling in this final match, which again, I think it wasn't the best fixture for England, but it is what it is. So I'm going to roll off to the side. I'm going to pop that up here on my phone. So what we're looking at here was pretty much a 4-3-3. You could argue the formation just a little bit here, but really the big takeaway was actually Shaw starting, which I didn't think he was going to be starting this match just because I didn't think he was going to be fully match fit, but he did play fairly well. We will talk about him in a little bit, but the big talking points were Harry Kane and Foden, which again, in my last video, I talked about these two guys shouldn't be starting this match, and it was almost present in this match. Now, I'm not going to harp on Foden as much because in the entire first half, his main role was to follow Rodri around, which that is a product of the system itself, which that right there questions my take on Gareth Southgate in this match, because yes, I understand how good Rodri is as a player, but you're taking one of your most creative players, one of your most dynamic players in the Premier League, and having him follow play around, which takes him out of the match itself. It would have made more sense had it been Rice or Manu, but really using Foden was probably the worst player to use on him, because what again, this allowed massive gaps in the side of the pitch. So again, if Rodri worked his way off to the side, that meant that again Foden had to follow him, and there was this huge gap on that left side, and vice versa. If Rodri really wanted to overlap, then you saw England have too many players inside one small area, which this tactic-wise does not make sense. Now, that all being said, though, what I do want to talk about, though, too, is Foden really didn't offer much in this entire game. Did come off in that second half, but I think Ivan Toney came in for him, which really should have been sooner than later, but like I said, that wasn't the big issue. The big problem here was Harry Kane, which we did talk about prior to this video. And again, nothing wrong with Harry Kane. He's a great player, but the system itself does not work for this player. And it's, again, not to knock on Harry Kane here, but what he usually offers is him dropping back into this midfield. And because of that, this again creates this massive gap here, which makes it very easy for Spain to defend because there's not a single player pushing on their back line. So again, if we're looking at their back line, if we just put Nacho in here, and again, these aren't actually players for them, but if we put these players here, they have free roam to again play a ball around this entire time. And Harry Kane, yes, did pressure a few times here and there, but overall was not there. And again, you need a guy that can make these runs to really cause a little bit of panic in defense, and that was not there. What this then caused too was Saka. Anytime he was going up and down the side of the pitch, which we will talk about in a second too, he never had a ball to play into the box for Harry Kane to run into, which is why Ollie Watkins or Ivan Toney would have made more sense starting in this match, because if you're looking at the rest of the players on this squad, they're a better fit. Not saying they're a better player, but they're a better fit. Now, Saka himself, I think the other issue he had was he was pretty much told to hug this side right here. He never really cut in or went inside, which same thing. This was trying to spread out Spain, which again, I do understand why you'd want to do that. But this then caused massive areas in this side of the pitch right here for really overloading Spain again. So they could just drop a player in, which we did see Cucurella make some runs into that area. Yes, we will talk about that in just a second as well. But this, again, there was pockets of space that England kept leaving open for Spain, and Spain were the better team in this game. They were the better team this entire tournament. So again, I'm not surprised that they did win this match. It was closer than I thought it was going to be, but there were issues that we did see with this. Now, the other problem I thought was Walker. I don't know if he picked up an injury early on, because he didn't seem like he was a player that he has been in other games this entire tournament. It seemed like he was getting overworked, overrun, and maybe Spain did see something that they could overlap and overload that right side and beat Walker, because we did see that in the second half. But the other thing that Spain did really well was overloading not just one side but the other side. We saw Nico Williams definitely go off to this right side. Yamal was able to then cut inside and really did cause a lot of havoc for that left side. Again, I think Luke Shaw did a fairly decent job for what we saw for him. And again, not having many match minutes under his belt in this entire tournament. But overall, this didn't create a lot of chaos for England's back line. And eventually it did break. It did take until the second half. And right off the bat, when I believe Spain made just a few different changes, again, they were overloading this side. Nico Williams had a great finish. Pickford probably isn't going to save that, so I'm not going to discredit him on that one because he did have a fairly good game, had multiple big saves. But overall, this was one of the key areas. Now, what England should have been doing, which we did see Southgate make this change, was make these players sub, and they should have done a lot sooner, if not starting this game. Now, Palmer came in for Manu, and I believe Watkins came in for Kane. These were two big ones. Ivan Toney came in later. But this right here is what we should have seen probably in the starting 11 if we're being real here. And again, maybe you could argue Foden shouldn't have been starting, but that's in a whole different story. But what Palmer then was able to do was float in this area. And this, again, created chaos on Spain's end because now that there was a player that can drop into these open pockets of space, it really did cause Spain to worry where their players should be. It really broke up their tactician, really broke their lines up. And what we eventually saw was, again, Palmer played the ball to Saka, who then played the ball, and again, Watkins was inside the box here. So again, he backed that line up here. But then Bellingham was here, played the ball, dropped it off to Palmer, who had a nice curling shot, which again, take nothing away. There was a little bit of deflection, but it was a great finish, great build-up. And really, this is when we saw England actually playing football. We actually saw them pushing forward and actually attacking, not sitting back like we saw the majority of this game. But what happened was once they scored, they then sat back again. And this is where the issue was. Once they started sitting back, this is where, again, Spain was able to then go forward and keep pressuring and keep attacking. Now you're going to say, well, yeah, but then they hit them on the counterattack, which, yes, they did. But what happened was there is that, again, as England was backing up, getting pushed back by Spain, they eventually were trying to leave that pressure and trying to hit them on the counterattack. What happens is when you do that, this then causes almost a counterattack, which I'm not sure if that's even the term. But really what then happened was Cucurella was able to play a ball here and just play a perfect ball. And yes, Gary Neville, you did get it wrong in this one. Cucurella was a phenomenal player, was not the weakest link. Alexi Lalas, there's multiple pundits who, again, are going to rip on this player, but he did fairly well. There's a reason why he was on team of the season or team of the tournament, but still, this guy played very well. Yes, he had Saka also in his pocket, but again, I think that's more of the form, the tactics that Gareth Southgate imposed on this team. But overall, these were a few of the key areas. And like I said, if Gareth Southgate could go back and change this, two of the big changes would be, again, starting Watkins and probably starting Palmer in this game. And whether Foden does start or not, that's a questionable mark. But like I said, this is a big talking point for England because when you're looking at the tactics, what Gareth Southgate brings to the table, there is not a real solid tactic besides we're going to play defensively, we're going to just grind the game out and try to hit them once or twice and therefore win a game 1-0, 2-1, which when it comes to international games, yes, you can possibly do that over some time. But when you come up against a team like Spain, and luckily England were on the weaker side of the bracket, which I think if they had to play Germany, played France, played any of the other teams that Spain had to go through, I don't think England even makes it to the final. But because they just sit back, really allowed Spain to dictate this match. And this is going to be the problem again and again for Spain. And this is the reason why Gareth Southgate, I don't think is going to be the manager that gets them past the final hurdle. Yes, he is getting them to the final, which he is breaking those barriers. And that's a massive thing by itself. But they need another manager to get England past that point where Gareth Southgate is not going to be that guy unless he starts changing his tactics and start using players that are actually playing very well and not just looking at the player's name. Because when you look at Harry Kane, yes, I understand you're thinking of a player that should be starting each and every match for England. But from what we saw, this player really just looked like a shadow of himself. And again, he is a great player. He can score goals. But when you put him in a system that we saw for England, Ollie Watkins makes sense. Ivan Toney makes sense. A different striker makes sense. Same thing with Palmer. The guy is very creative. He only played, I think, 100 and some plus minutes, yet had contributed multiple goals. I think he scored, 2 goals. He had 2 assists or something along those lines in this tournament and barely played a full match in 90 minutes. The fact is, this guy had the capability of being one of the key players for England, for Gareth Southgate, and he only utilized him late in each and every match, which, again, is very questionable to say the least. Now, overall, though, I think England did have a fairly good tournament. I think, again, Gareth Southgate, give him applause where he deserves it. Getting to a final is never an easy task, but if he wants to get any further with this team, lift any silverware with England, he has to change these tactics and do something slightly different. And if he's able to do that, England could have a possibility of winning the World Cup, which, again, it's a long ways away. Anything can happen between now and 2 years. But still, that being said, England have a fairly young side with, again, Jude Bellingham, Cole Palmer, Oli Watkins, Saka, just to name a few players that are very good at attacking, Phil Foden. And therefore, again, if they really harness these players' capability, England could be a giant when it comes to the World Cup. But we will see in what happens with Gareth Southgate. So if you enjoyed this video, I greatly appreciate if you do hit the like button, subscribe down below. It means a lot to me, and I will see you in our next video.